What's up, guys? It's Dave and Duncan back from Metal Epidemic with another album review. And for this review, Duncan and I have been checking out the new album from Italian doom rock band Messa. The band's new album Close will be released on March 11th via Svart Records. Oh. Every time you say it, Svart Records.
Well, chill.
So this is album number 3 from Messa, who have been active since around 2014. This is the first album on Svart Records, which was recorded and mixed by Maurizio Baggio and mastered by Mart Bordin and Maurizio Baggio as well. After releasing 2 widely celebrated cult records, the latest of which, Feast for Water in 2018, was a critical breakthrough success, with Rolling Stone calling the whole album captivating, wringing maximum drama out of its savvy, stylish clash.
An album that I'd actually listened to before.
Oh, there we go.
So I was like, yay! For once I can actually contrast and compare between albums, which is not like me.
Excellent. I think you had sent me a message about the first single from this.
Yes.
I think just at the point that I'd actually just listened to it. So it was like the two of us were just... I keep
forgetting we're both on the Svart mailing list, so if I get the email, you get the email. In fact, chances are you probably got the email just before me because you're press. But yeah, I'm always like, I'm all like anything that they post, I'm all over like a rash in a baby's ass. Yeah. Like desperately trying to like find the next thing that Svart is going to make me praise with levels that shouldn't be given to normal humans. And yeah, the single was The Tits. So I was very excited about this one.
The general consensus was we need to hear more of that.
We need more of this, Dave.
So, Duncan, what did you think of the album? Did you like it, or was it a bit of a Messa?
Let's end this recording.
I'll see myself out.
Let's end this now. Let's bring it to a close. Or close. We're unsure. The problem is we're unsure because the English language being as fickle as it is, the name of this album is either Close or Close, and we're unsure. So it's either or, neither nor, as far as I'm concerned.
Yes.
Let's just take a little second to break this down. Messa's previous album was a bit of a tome. There was a lot going on. It was very, very dense. It was incredibly well written. And I was a bit concerned when I saw the runtime of this album. Album is like, I mean, it's not even just like a ball hair over an hour. It's comfortably over an hour. You know, if this album was doing the long jump and then we had to, like zoom in to how far the feet were over the board before they jumped, it's comfortably a foot over. You know what I mean? It's about an hour and 6 minutes in length. And like the first 3 songs of this album are about a third of the album, right? Before it takes, I don't know, a minute off one of the songs. So like your listening experience here, you're about 4 songs in before you get a breather. And then then the album switches up and then drops a little 10-minute track in there for shits and giggles before you get your next breather. So it's another 3 epically lengthed songs before you get something, which I'll give them when Left the Track kicks in. It's, it's a short, sharp burst, but then it once again closes with an epic track, which might put some people off. Yeah. And if it does, you're a fool. This album is fucking awesome. And there are 3 primary reasons why this new Messa album should be in your rotation. The first thing is scope. These songs are huge in scope. No half measures. They aim for grandeur and deliver in spades. Second reason, instrumentation. These guys bring in fucking everything, and I'm fairly sure I heard a kitchen sink. Like, genuinely, there's so much going on music. And then the third reason, vocally. This is about as good as it gets. This chick's vocals are about as good as it gets. They're jaw-droppingly good. I mean, like, to the point where she hits notes in this recording and hits melodies that literally had the hairs on the back of my neck standing up. Like haunting, sickly sweet, dynamic, corrosive, just like all these different like elements that she weaves and crafts in that just like honestly, and it's kind of like when you're listening to it, it's like the kind of listening equivalent to someone giving you a spoonful of honey. We're like it's like just a spoonful, any more than that, and it's sickening. But just at that level, she manages to deliver on it. This is this is an absolute triumph for this band. Like you get the doom stuff in here for sure, but there's a kind of Middle Eastern flavour to it in parts which I really like, that I didn't know they were from Italy, but that doesn't surprise me that it's kind of Italian, Italy being so close to Africa. You kind of get these little flares in there, especially when they start mixing up some of the instrumentation later on in the percussive elements, where you get these kind of a lot of clicky noises, a lot of different kind of percussive sims, which add to that kind of Middle Eastern flavour, as well as some of the riff work. By God, do they throw a saxophone in here? I think it might be an alto sax. I'm not entirely sure. It was a kind of cross between. At first, like I was straining my ears. I was like, that's either like a really, really, really sultry kind of seductive clarinet, or it's a saxophone. And then later on, when it comes in the track, I was like, no, that's a sax. I think it might be an alto sax. It sounds fucking great. But it's really difficult the tracks are so long, it's really difficult to sit there and go, well, let me tell you a little story about a song called Dark Horse, which goes through this movie. All of them are experiences unto themselves, which in some respects should make me dislike this album. And that, I should be sitting there going like, well, they're all their own album, really, Dave. But it actually hangs together incredibly well. The two shorter tracks, Hollow and Left a Track, that I mentioned earlier on, are paced and placed perfectly for me. I think your opener, Suspended Dark Horse, Orpheles, maybe, I don't know, and Rubdo, those tracks essentially take you on this kind of winding, darkly folkish and very doomy sort of, and also hugely rocky sort of like movements. And then you get, like I said, you get that breather. And then Pilgrim hits in, and Pilgrim's like, I damn near where this album fucking shines. It's the amalgamation of absolutely everything in terms of everything that you've heard before, and a great segue into what you're going to get when you get 0 = 2. And both those songs together are like right in the middle of the album as well, almost 20 minutes in run length, which is once again a third of the fucking album. Those kick in, and it is just this joyous journey into really clever songwriting and great use of pace. At times reminded me a little bit of if 40 Watt Sun was a bit more rocky, had a bit more oomph behind it, a bit more kind of gusto. At times there are elements in here that would sit perfectly alongside that. And then Serve Him, which is this weirdly almost kind of ghost-like kind of, reminded me of like a cross between Ghost and Puppy, in terms of how conventional it actually is as a doom track. It's the one where you go through all these like winding bits of instrumentation. You end up with probably the most conventional song, but it's still surprising in terms of the movements that it does. Production on this has got this vintage warmth to it that I really, really, really like. But once again, with the precision of kind of 2020s, articulation of how instruments should be recorded, so you can hear them all, and there's plenty of instrumentation and plenty of percussion, which you can easily pick out in the mix. Nothing's lost here. Nothing sounds like, that should be up a little bit. It's all perfectly mixed in, and there's a lot going on, and there's a danger that it could become too muddied. To me, it didn't sound that way at all. So I'm kind of in the same position I was with 40 Watt Sun. This is a you have to like clear an hour. Best listen to later on, I feel, in the day. But good pair of headphones. You sit down and you let Messa just work their weird dark magic over you, and it's difficult not to fucking love this. I listened to it 3 times. It's 3 hours of my life. Well, actually, because it's over, so it's like 3 3/4 hours. Or maybe not as much as that. Let's say 3.5. Let's be kind. 3.5 hours of my life that I genuinely feel has been rewarded and well spent. Svart have this knack of just picking bands and
they do.
Not putting we need the singles, we need the 4-minute track on this one, or we need an album to come in that's like under 40 minutes. They don't do that. They let bands really craft their own visions, and I think that's where you're rewarded as a listener. Because these, like, they're an album this length should have lethargy in it, and I didn't feel it at all. I genuinely felt all the way through it like I was in an old amphitheater somewhere in Rome and being serenaded operatically by one of the greatest doom bands to walk the planet going just now. It's just, there's a dark art to making music like this, and I think Messa like have it in spades. So yeah, I thought this was the tits, man. Like genuinely thought this was fucking great. One of my favourite female vocalists of recent memory, and we've heard a boatload of great ones, but she has a tone, man, that just like if there is a God and God made her, then she was meant to sing in this band. So yeah. What about yourself, Dave? I clearly thought this was okay. What did you make of Messa's Close or Close?
I actually hadn't heard these guys before.
All right, I thought you were the one that. See, I can never tell. Like this is the problem with being friends with Dave for so long. And like albums, you sometimes find albums that you're convinced Dave sent you, because how else would you have found them?
No, it wasn't me this time.
Right.
But after like hearing that the previous album got so much like critical acclaim, I was keen to hear it, to check it out, and I could see like why certain websites and magazines were kind of hyping it up. There is a real kind of feeling of quality about this band, and that was evident on Feast for Water from 2018. As much as I liked it, I did still feel like there was a lot going on, and it sounded like they were still almost kind of shaping their sound a little bit on the album. There's a lot of the same elements and styles here on Close, but I think that kind of 3-4 year gap between albums, I think it sounds like they've clearly been working on the different elements that make up their sound. And some of that has paid dividends on Close, especially the opening of the album. I think the first like 2 tracks are the perfect example of how to kick an album off. They absolutely grab your attention. And I think, you've kind of touched on it, but I think that's primarily down to the fact of the sublime kind of vocal performance from Sarah Biankin from the band. Man, she has got an unbelievable voice.
And then she just finds, like, I don't know what it is, like she's hitting you like, this is amazing, and then a chorus kicks in and her voice just lifts and you're like, oh my good God.
Yeah. There was when I was listening to her voice, I was thinking there's moments that are a little bit kind of like almost kind of Stevie Nicks, and then there's moments of that reminded me of Ryan from Dool a little bit as well, and Joanna from Lucifer as well. A bit of a mix of all 3, but it's really
like a tiny smidge of Jess and the Ancient Ones as well, which I really like. When they need to go a bit rocky, she can do it.
Yeah. So, but I mean, you could listen to her vocals on repeat. She's got a very commanding kind of vocal, very in tone, but it's smooth and like what unbelievable range, flawless pitch, and her tone just fits this like kind of occult vibe perfectly. But it's not all about the vocals. Great vocals doesn't automatically mean a great album. And thankfully, like the music here is also really good as well. I was particularly impressed with the way they kind of control each track. There are moments where they really let Sarah do her thing and deliver those like big hooks. But then there are other times where the music takes more of a move to the front. Those little kind of like jazz guitar licks on Suspended on the opening track were a stroke of genius. And then you've got things like a more almost kind of like post-punk type rhythms on Dark Horse that can really kind of driving the track forward. But I thought, like you've mentioned it already, that the sax was brilliant on track 3. I did feel like track 3, just coming after Dark Horse, what was it called? Orphaless? I'm not sure how you pronounce that, but
we don't know how to pronounce these words. We're Scottish, forgive us.
I don't know if I was ready or quite ready for the album to kind of slow down there just yet.
Right.
On track 3, I felt like the pacing was a little bit weird for me personally, but they follow up with Rubido, which is fantastic, and Sarah hit some notes on that track that are unbelievable. You mentioned the kind of Middle Eastern streak around the kind of middle of the album.
Yeah.
And I think it's an oud. I think that the instrument is a kind of Arabic kind of instrument that they use. You hear it on Hollow and Pilgrim, and a little bit on 0 = 2 as well. Although when Pilgrim kicked in, I did think at first this sounds like a Middle Eastern cover of Metallica's Wherever I May Roam. Like similar kind of melody when it kicked in. I was like, what?
I'm sure that exists out there on the internet.
It probably does, yeah. But it isn't a cover, but it kind of descends into something like far doomier than Metallica have ever written in their life. But I liked it. The Middle Eastern thing was cool. I thought it worked well against their that kind of occult type sound. Adds a bit of almost like kind of like mysterious type vibe to the whole thing.
Yeah, and it's been kind of, the thing is as well, I think this is like if Zealand Order are doing the kind of super flash commercial version of this, this is kind of like the retro kind of your uncle's record that's hidden away somewhere that's like, oh, so you like this band? Well, like, it's that kind of feel. Like the way they do it, like both bands are using kind of Middle Eastern and African vibes, but for completely different reasons and with completely different effects, which I think is really cool.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. On the flip side, there are some things I didn't like about this album.
Tell me what you didn't like.
One thing that just kind of kept playing in my mind a little bit was that there are little flashes of things that they add in, like the jazz guitar or the little bit of sax, or there's a little bit of like retro synth at the end of Rubido, and I feel like they could have kind of added more of that. Like I feel like they touched on those elements, then they never really come back to them in any kind of major way, and I felt like they worked so well, like that little bit of jazz and the sax and the synth. I just felt like I wish they'd kind of added a little bit more of that. Maybe I might be wrong. Maybe it wouldn't stood out as much if they used them over and over again.
It's always a danger though. You don't know. Like, part of you like something because you get a clip of it, but then you think if it had more, then it might. But you don't. Yeah. There's no way to tell, so you kind of just have to go with your gut.
Yeah, I kind of felt like I really liked those parts, but I kept thinking to myself, I'd like a little bit more of that. That's just me. The other thing, there's a bit of a what the fuck moment on this album, and that comes on track 9, Lethal track, which is like a punk-infused black metal track.
Yep.
Complete with blast beats and black metal vocals.
Oh, yes.
And don't get me wrong, it's cool. Like, and the production somehow still is in keeping with the rest of the album, but it felt weird. Like, especially as the kind of second last song, it's like 44 seconds. So
if that is like
it doesn't outstay its welcome at all, but it doesn't feel like a song either. So I was a bit like, not sure about that. I'm not sure if that should have been there, to be honest. It was cool, but I didn't really get it, to be honest.
Well, I think the last track is basically just a good old-fashioned satanic rock track. So I kind of got that as being like kind of the intro to that.
Right.
That kind of like extreme Satanism into something which is kind of a bit more in keeping with kind of 70s occult rock.
Yeah, it is.
But I know what you're saying. It is the odd one out on this album. Yeah. When you've mentioned all the other instruments, like when you get like a full on like, and I mean when I say like jazz sax solo, I mean that as in the guy's just like fucking blowing the shit out of that. But you're right. It's the one that's so. But did you feel that's just maybe one step too far then?
A little bit. I just felt like it was a little bit odd. I liked it on its own, but on the album, I was like,
what are we doing?
Not sure about that. And then that kind of brings me on to my last issue, is the length of the album.
It's long. It's long.
Too long. For me, I thought it was too long. I felt like some of the tracks felt their length. Like at 9 and 10 minutes, I was like, this feels long. And then when I was thinking like tracks like Level track 9, really for me were just adding to an album that's already too long at 64 minutes.
It's only 45 seconds.
I know that is. I know, but I was just like, is it really needed though? You know what I mean? So I did feel like it was a kind of lengthy listen. Like it felt its length to me. But in saying that, I thought the album closer, Serving Him, as a great closing track. I really liked the kind of almost like kind of classic rock vibes in the guitar solo. And again, Sarah's kind of choice of melody was perfect. Great production as well. I can't disagree on that. It's very vintage sounding, totally works with their sound. No issues on that front at all. So it was mostly good, but there were a couple of things that kind of I was just a bit like, not sure about that. Want more of that and a wee bit less of that. But for a band that I'd never heard before, I still enjoyed this one. Yeah, it was a good album.
I get the feeling that the stripped down version of this, the more conventional stripped down version of this, is something like a King Woman.
Yeah,
you
possibly,
know what I mean?
Yeah.
They weirdly exist in the same bubble, even though they don't sound anything fucking alike.
True, yeah. I almost mentioned them when I was talking about them, actually. I was thinking about King Woman, and I thought, is that too far out there? But no,
I think it's something to do with that. It's the production, I think.
Yeah,
there's a warmness. There's a kind of warm, kind of tactile thing about the production that just makes me kind of feel that way. I don't know. It's difficult to describe. Yeah. Okay, so ratings for this new one from Messa. Close. What's your score on this one? Where did you go with this? Even though it's long, the length doesn't perturb me at all. This is one that, like I said before, this is if I have time at night, I will sit down and listen to this album and rank it in. And it's probably the only time I'll ever really listen to it is in those moments of, in between the sun setting and the moon rising is probably the best time to listen to this and just to absorb it in. There's nothing that I dislike on it, even the kind of jazzy sax solo, which, like I said before, it is full on just there's a guy having fun, and even their take on black metal isn't really anything that I would hold as a negative against them. I like the character it brings to the album. For me, this is a 4.5. I think it's a fucking great album. I think they should be immensely proud of themselves. And I see this album very much like the previous album getting a lot of traction because I think they do so much so well. And then there's plenty of bands that do this but don't have that voice at the front. And that's where they're a real threat because every band should have a singer this because she's fucking amazing. So 4.5 from me.
Nice. I think when they nail it, this album is on fire. And I think the start of the album is a perfect example of that. I think Sarah's vocals are just fantastic, and they're the kind of constant throughout this album. They continually deliver the goods. On the other hand, for me, it felt a little bit bloated. I think either take out a couple of tracks or bring the length down on some of the tracks you have, and I think it becomes a bit easier to digest. For me personally, anyway, I liked the addition of the jazz guitars, the sax. I just felt like I wanted a little bit more of that, even just kind of small kind of segments throughout. The black metal track, it was cool, but it felt odd to me on the album. I wouldn't mind if that was a separate thing, like they were doing a black metal album. Cool, I'll check that out. But I don't know. For me, it just felt kind of strange on the album. That being said, even with the kind of small criticisms, I'd probably go 4 out of 5 on this. I feel like anything lower than that is unfair because the good stuff on this album is really good. And I do think Messa brings something to the table that is a little bit different from the other kind of doom rock bands on the scene as well. So I kind of applaud them for that.
And on the Svart label. Yeah. I mean, Svart have a great roster of kind of doomy, folky sounding bands, and a lot of them do sound distinctive. Some of them are very, very, very similar, and Messa stand out.
Yeah, for sure. absolutely. So yeah, 4 out of 5 for me. The album itself drops on March 11th on Svart Records, as we said. I'll put some links below to the band's Facebook, pre-orders and stuff for the album as well, so you can check it out. Let us know what you think. Once you've heard some of the singles, once you've heard the album, drop some comments and below. Happy to hear your thoughts and opinions on it. That is the review. Thank you for checking it out. Much appreciated. We'll be back with another review very soon, but until then, take care. Speak to you soon.
Bye, everyone.